who is going to help me on this challenge? So that's identification of a team. And that, I think, requires you to set your ego aside because everyone thinks they can do everything.
The country in which you live. So you don't have to do something for the entire country. Start with maybe your city.
The thing is, this research phase, which you're saying is so important, it's not a lucrative phase because it's actually a cost phase. It's costing me my time, my money, and my energy.
Sometimes it's tough because people are not always willing to share. You're going to have to find connections who can connect you to the right people who will say, okay, I'll give you half an hour today or 1 hour today.
How do I know that I have collected enough research to make a business case?
So I think first of all, a founder needs to start doing this before they even graduate from college or university.
And what kind of characteristics are you looking for in people?
So I need somebody who believes in what I'm doing enough to be able to sell it.
So how often does the non-documentation take place?
More often than you would want.
So more often it's not documented. You were asking me why I have so many cars behind.
So yes, today you bought a car, tomorrow you might have to sell everything that you bought, right?
The best networking events in Pakistan are
weddings.
Are weddings and soyams, actually.
Soyams?
Yes.
Really?
What does it take to start up a startup? That's a question that I've had in my mind for a while. What does it take to be a great founder? And what makes a terrible founder of a startup business? I've been wondering these questions, or I've been thinking about these questions for a while because we're at a point where things are looking good, things are looking better. Maybe this is a good time to get back into that startup space, to start thinking about a problem that you want to solve. And maybe in the near future, some funding might be available. But do you really need funding to get your startup off the ground? All of these questions will be answered today in today's episodes. I have someone who owns and runs this space on as a guest. Her name is Jehan Ara. She's the founder and CEO of Katalyst Labs, which is a startup accelerator innovation hub and women leadership fellowship program. You also know her from Nest.io. You know her from her involvement in Pasha. She's been involved with the TikTok content committee. She's been involved with the government at a provincial and a federal level with policy. She's someone who knows the startup space, the founders, the VCs very well. And she's going to help answer some of these questions today. Check out this episode. Hi, Jehan Ara. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Faizan?
I'm good. Thank you for taking the time out. I've been wanting to have this chat for a very long time.
I know. I'm sorry I sort of had such a crazy schedule.
No,
but I'm glad we made it happen.
No, so basically when I was introducing you, there's such a long list of things you're involved with. I mean, your time is probably the most precious commodity you have.
It is, but I love to do all those things. So.
And that's good because what you've contributed, I think, to the startup space through Nest, through Katalyst, all the work that you've done in all of the organizations that you're involved in, I think you have probably the best pulse of the startup space in Pakistan. And so what I wanted to start off with is an understanding of the core driver of the startup space, which is the founder.
Okay.
Without a founder, there's no startup space, right?
Absolutely.
And the founder is the one who's thought of this big solution to a crazy problem that they think needs to be solved. Right? So my question is, number one, what in your experience with all of these organizations makes a good founder?
So a good founder is someone who has, first of all, who understands what the market is all about, has done their research, figured out, okay, this is a problem that with my capabilities, I can help solve. And then he or she decides, I can't do it alone. How many people with what kind of skill set do I need to involve in order to make it happen? And it has to be a small number of people because people cost money. The work itself, the research, the marketing, everything is going to cost money. So they need to be able to figure out how much money, and they need to figure out where that money is going to come from. And how long a runway do they have to reach that first step of solving the problem and then maybe raising money to take it to the next level.
So I'm going to break that down. You said, first of all, they need to identify the problem.
Yes.
And to identify the problem, they need to really scope out the market size, the scope of the problem, the dollars behind it, the rupees behind it, and so on, right? And then you said that once they've identified that this is a problem that needs to be solved and it is lucrative enough to pursue,
Yes.
who is going to help me on this challenge? So that's identification of a team. And that, I think, requires you to set your ego aside because everyone thinks they can do everything. And then
also, somebody else may be able to do it better than
and someone may, exactly. So you identifying what your true value add is in this. And then third thing you said is around the money. So I'm going to break it down. First, when you talk about identifying a problem, walk me through what you mean by researching the market, because it's very hard, especially in our market, to get good quality data and research, right? So it's not like I can Google up a report by Kantar or, sort of some research company and say, oh, here it is. Here's the answer. Give me an example of a founder that researched a problem in a very unconventional way that you came off.
So it doesn't have to be unconventional, Faizan. It has to be, do you understand the circumstances in which you live, the country in which you live? So you don't have to do something for the entire country. Start with maybe your city.
Okay.
And say, okay, this is a problem that nobody else is trying to solve or nobody else is able to solve well, and I think I can get started on it.
Right.
So it could be to do with healthcare or education. It could be an e-commerce problem. It could be, reaching a certain number of people who nobody is paying any attention to. So you have to be passionate about that.
Right.
That, look, I think those people are not being included. And other than being able to make a living out of it or make money, your primary concern should be that I'm trying to solve this problem.
So making money should not be the primary driver.
It should not be the driver. It should never be the driver.
What if you don't make money? Then how do you sustain a lifestyle?
No, you have to be able to eventually make money in order to grow this.
Right.
So you have to make money, but that shouldn't be the primary driver. The primary driver should be, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? Is it a big enough problem that I can make a business out of it? And also, will it create any impact? So not every business is a social impact business,
right?
But every business is an impact-driven business.
So I'll give you an example, right? Yeah. You were asking me why I have so many cars behind me.
Yes.
I have a small workshop.
Okay.
And it started off as a toolbox that I used to repair cars for my friends in college, and then eventually the passion grew, and now I have a small workshop that I do a basic repair and maintenance for friends and family. Right. I've always debated whether I want to scale this business and make it a true big functioning workshop. But it's really hard for me to assess the market for good quality repair and maintenance for vehicles. How would I go about thinking about something like that? Because there's some social impact. You're giving, sort of poor vocational trained individuals employment. But how do I think about this problem?
So I think maybe go to first the motor car companies, find out how many cars they're selling and to what kind of individuals, right? That's how as you said, there's nobody who's doing enough research on this so that you can just say, hey, this is the research, I'm going to tap into it. Right. You have to go to different people in that segment and try and assess for yourself if it's a big enough market and whether there's a need for it.
So I'll actually have to put in the time of physically going, meeting, listening, documenting, collating. It's very tedious.
So it is tedious, but it's unfortunate that many founders or startup founders feel that, this is going to be easy.
Yeah.
Starting my own business, I can wake up when I want. I can go to sleep. I can work 2 days a week or 1 day a week. And that's it. No. Once you're a founder, you work every waking hour and you sleep as little as possible because you want to create a business that you're passionate about.
Right.
So yes, the research is going to take time. It is going to mean that you're going to run around, trying to find people who are going to give you the information you need. Sometimes it's tough because people are not always willing to share. You're going to have to find connections who can connect you to the right people who will say, okay, I'll give you half an hour today or 1 hour today. So this is all sort of connected. And that's why it's not easy. It's never going to be easy.
And the thing is, this research phase, which you're saying is so important, it's not a lucrative phase because it's actually a cost phase. It's costing me my time, my money, and my energy, right? And so at what point do I put, let's say, a cap on it saying that, okay, this is where it needs to end. I'm not willing to invest more time, money, or energy beyond this certain point. How does a founder think around those lines?
So I think, first of all, a founder needs to start doing this before they even graduate from college or university.
Oh, that early?
Yeah. because this is the time that they are not needing to earn money. Parents are paying for food, housing, everything.
Yeah.
In fact, parents are still paying for food and housing after you start your business.
Yeah.
They're not going to throw you out, right?
Yeah.
So that's the time you start doing all this research. How much time is enough time? It depends on how big the problem is.
Right.
And only the founder can decide, okay, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. Nobody can tell him or her that, look, it's enough. You've put in a year or you put in 6 months. Don't put in any more time. So there can be guidance,
right?
But the decision has to be made by the founder that, look, this is important enough to me that I'm willing to give it 2 years or 3 years.
Right.
And mostly founders who are in the social impact space put in a lot more time because the problem is big enough for them or there is a personal angle to it.
Right.
So they will put in the time
and
they will starve. They will, beg, borrow, not steal, but beg, borrow, go and eat at a friend's or whatever and not spend money on anything that they feel is not important enough.
And in that case, how do I know as a founder that and because there's not research out there for problems, let's say in Pakistan to be solved, right? How do I know that I have collected enough research to make a business case? Like, is it a gut? Is it 20 data points? Is it 100 data points? How do I know it's enough? Because I now have to convince not only myself, which hopefully I'll be convinced, but someone else as well. So what amount of research is enough?
So I think anyone who gets into it knows. So if you're getting into education, you know how many children are out of school.
Right.
That's something everybody knows, right?
Yep.
How you're going to change that is something that you need to figure out. And whether that's going to pay you or not is also something you need to figure out. Also, if you cannot involve the public sector schools or the government, you're not going to be able to solve the education problem in a major way.
True.
You can only address parts of it. Is that enough for you? That's something you need to decide. That, look, should I start somewhere rather than focus on the entire problem? Because you can never start by addressing the entire problem. You have to start somewhere. And then you take it step by step. And then expand on that problem and say, okay, now I've addressed this. Can I address that? So initially, you are not going to be able to convince anyone that's a big enough problem unless it is healthcare, education, that they already know.
Right.
So those are problems that you can...
Those are the easy ones.
Those are the easy ones, although they're the most difficult to solve.
Right.
Right. So I think those are problems that you need to figure out. Maybe helping others to start businesses is another one. So if you go in Karachi, even in the poorer urban areas, there are people who cannot get jobs. Can you help them start their own companies?
Right.
Small companies, so they can make enough of a living to feed their families.
Right.
Maybe that's a passion.
Right.
And then eventually when you've done that for enough people, somebody may want to fund that. Because a lot of VCs are not just looking for the money, they are looking for returns, of course. But they're also looking to see if they can create some sort of impact on the society in which they're putting in the money. So
you're saying that part of their investment thesis is not just a return, it's a social impact.
It is partly a social impact.
Right.
But yes, financial returns definitely, because they're taking money from LPs. Absolutely. And they need to return that money with
lots of return.
Lots of return.
Not some.
Yeah. But if it's a big enough problem, that happens.
Yeah.
That happens automatically if the founder and the founder's team is able to solve it in a reasonable way.
So now as a founder, let's say I've done my research, I feel I've got enough right. And I've scoped and identified the problem I want to solve. And I realize that I can't do it alone. Walk me through how you should start thinking about staffing a team or identifying a co-founder. Like, what is the thought process and what kind of characteristics are you looking for in people?
Okay, so if you are a technical founder, so you're super good at technology, then you know that, okay, I may be able to create a product that is technologically sound, but I'm not a marketeer.
I can't sell it to save my life.
Sell it to save my life. So I need somebody who believes in what I'm doing enough to be able to sell it. Well, there are lots of people who sell anything.
So like the Steve Wozniak to Steve Jobs.
Exactly.
Right.
So Steve Jobs could sell anything.
He could sell anything.
And Wozniak could develop anything, technically. So together they made a strong team. To find that kind of person, you need to be hanging about with people who are young, who are driven, who want to be in the entrepreneurial space, because not everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur. To say, okay, Faizan, today I'm saying you should become an entrepreneur. Who am I to tell you to become an entrepreneur? You should decide that, right?
Right.
That this is something I'm driven by. I lose sleep over it, that I'm going to do this. And if I don't do this, then I'm not going to be happy. A lot of young people want to become entrepreneurs. They want to start their own businesses. They want to create impact. They don't want to work for anyone else. So that's how it all starts.
So if I'm a technical guy, I need to find someone who is a sales and marketing sociable person who has those qualities you mentioned, that they want to work for themselves and they're willing to put in the time, effort, energy to do so.
And who also believe in that idea.
And who believe in the idea.
And then you need someone who is going to financially manage the company.
No, so wait a second. What you're saying, finding a co-founder or a team is harder than doing the research then?
Yes.
I thought the research is going to be running around and collecting data, which is annoying because you're burning so much time, effort, energy. But how do you find that right fit? It's like a marriage.
It is. Absolutely. And also...
So is there a Rishta auntie of the startup world that finds co-founders?
No. Many try, but it's not possible. You need to find your own. Okay. So in the early days of the Nest, I used to do this. We used to have...
So you were the Rishta auntie.
I hope not. But we used to have founder matchmaking sessions where young people who were interested in becoming entrepreneurs or were entrepreneurs, may not have succeeded in their own idea, would come and hang out and meet each other. So meeting new people and finding out what they were doing, what they were interested in, becoming sort of friends, and then deciding, okay, let's have this first conversation on whether would you like to work with me on this idea. And then the most important thing that many founders forget is once you decide that these are the people I want to work with, document it. It is like a marriage.
The Sunnat way, by the way. Document everything.
Document everything. Because what happens if 6 months or 1 year down the road, once the product is there and you want to go forward with it, one of you decides that I'm not interested anymore. I'd rather just get a job and be done with it. I'm tired or I'm not interested. What happens? How much of the shares will that person take away with them? What part of the business do they own? All of that. It needs to be documented. Because, that is the way to do it.
So how often does the non-documentation take place?
More often than you would want.
So more often it's not documented. And that causes
because they're friends and they say, oh, we are friends, we wouldn't do anything to hurt each other, all of that. And then later on down, and sometimes there are 3 founders, which makes it even more complicated. And then one of them decides, no, not interested anymore. I'm leaving the country, or I've got a job offer from this MNC. I'm not going to do this anymore, but I own 1/3 of the company. So give me my money. And the company is now worth this much. So this is how much you should give.
Is that why, do you bring so who can you bring into this situation? Is it a lawyer? Is it someone else that can help the 3 of them or the 2 of them work through this?
So yes, that's why there are now startup lawyers who work with these people who don't charge a whole lot of money in the initial phases when these companies are being set up, in the hope that once they start to scale, they will be used as proper lawyers and be paid the right amount of money.
Right.
That is the best way to do it, because that's why we have lawyers come in and talk about the risks that these people are taking going into this together and what are the safeguards they need to put in. Yeah.
And so coming back to one other thing, you talked a lot about finding the right team and the right partner, maybe a couple of co-founders or whatever. You touched on matchmaking. You touched on networking and meeting people. But there's a contradiction there. If I'm a technical co-founder, probability and likelihood, and I'm stereotyping, which I shouldn't, but I will. You're most likely an introvert. You're most likely a product guy who wants to sit behind and build stuff or solve a problem, you're not the social guy. You're not great with people. You're great with building that thing and you're the best at it. How would you find that partner when that is not your forte?
That's why you need to go to events.
But you go to an event and you're not comfortable speaking to people, introducing yourself. Like it's overwhelming, right? For this kind of a personality.
But you need to learn, because otherwise you're not going to be able to build a business. On your own, you're never going to build a business. Or you might start a business, but it's not going to go anywhere all by yourself.
So as a technical co-founder, slightly introverted, not as comfortable in social settings, what are the best ways to learn effective networking and making the most of networking? Where do you go to learn this?
So there isn't a school where you can learn.
Right.
You go to startup events. First, you will stand in a corner by yourself.
Yeah.
I did that. I'm an introvert, but you wouldn't think so now.
Yeah.
I used to stand in a corner and say, how do I approach that person?
Yeah.
What if they don't like what I say?
Yeah.
Or I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
In the early days of tech, that's what I used to think, that I'm not really a technology person. I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
How do I approach these people? They're talking technology.
Yeah.
So the same thing, if you flip it, techies want to talk about coding. They want to talk about new tools that are coming out, all of that. So if there's a business person who approaches them, they just stand there sort of listening. But now, fortunately, what has happened is that every young person is interested in technology to some extent.
Right.
Using it, maybe the way the interface is designed, maybe seeing how people have made money using technology.
Right.
So there is always something to share. So the technology graduate may not be as social, but somebody else will come over and say, hey, what do you do? Somebody else is forthcoming and they'll say, where are you from? What do you do? Oh, what are you doing these days?
Right.
And then that starts a conversation.
Got it.
Slowly, you learn that you need to, talk to people.
So you're just going to have to put yourself out there.
You have to put yourself out there. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
And I'll flip it for, let's say, the more sales and marketing entrepreneur, sort of the big personality, commands a room, owns the conversation, talks a lot, but doesn't have a product to sell, would be phenomenal at selling anything. How can that person, and is passionate about solving a problem, but they need that tech co-founder. If they're that personality that doesn't listen because they're always talking and selling, how would they find the right partner?
They have to listen. Unfortunately, there's no easy solution.
So there's a learning curve for them as well.
There is a learning curve for them as well. And you wouldn't believe the number of youngsters who come to us and say, hey, can you define a problem that we can solve? No, nobody else defines the problem for you. You need to figure out what problem you're sort of concerned about and then see what kind of technology people you can attract so that you can solve it together.
So they just want to be a founder.
They just want to be a founder.
On a plate.
Many come to you and say,
really?
I want to be an entrepreneur, but tell me what product to make or what problem to solve. I say, no, that's not what we do. You have to figure that out. And so, that lazy attitude that many of us have, that somebody else is going to tell us what to do, I think it also comes from the way we are educated and all of that, we're told this is what you do at this age, and then this is what you do when you grow, to 10, 12 years old, or when you get to 15 years old, this is what you do. Nobody lets you find yourself to really figure out what it is you're about. So I think that our education system also is responsible for that. Things are changing because young people are demanding a lot more. There's a lot more available on the internet. They're having conversations with people outside of Pakistan, also in other cities of Pakistan, people who've had exposure and who share what they've learned and what they're trying to do. So I think things are changing, but not fast enough. They need to change even faster.
And so now let's say you've identified the problem, you've gone out, you've done the networking, you found the person, you've built the team is gelling, now you need the money, right?
Not necessarily.
So you don't need money?
No. So this is another thing that many founders should, think about. You don't get the money right off the bat just because you've decided this is a problem and I'm going to solve it. Now I have a team, somebody should give me money. No, Nobody's going to give you money until there's a proof
I
of
thought
concept.
I thought that was the model. Like you have an idea, you want to solve, build a team, and there's a check that's written out to you.
No,
No,
not at all. So you need to prove that that idea will work.
So the MVP concept.
Yeah. So you develop maybe an MVP. You find at least 100, 200 customers who are willing to use it and find it beneficial, who say that they're willing to pay for it, and how much are they willing to pay for it. Then maybe an investor will say, okay, yeah, seems like it's an idea that will go far. And so I'm going to put X amount of money in this. And then there's another problem, because you need to figure out how much of the company you need to give the investor for how much.
So I'm going to come to that in a second.
Yeah.
But this problem of solving for a minimum viable, let's say, product, right? Identifying a minimum number of customers. There is a cost involved in doing all of that, right? So let's say I'm making up, let's say, sustainable towel, right? I'm just making this up, or I'm making some sort of tech platform that, solves the traffic problem of Karachi. Both of them require time, some level of funds to build for, let's say, 100, 200,000 people. Where is that money coming from? Because I don't have it. I'm a founder. Like, I came up with the idea and brainstormed it, and my 3 team members were all broke.
Family, friends, other people.
And fools.
But this is where we have a gap.
Why would your friends, family, and fools invest into it? Well, fools will obviously invest into it.
Family, because they believe you can do anything that you send.
So it's a written off.
It's an emotional thing.
It's an emotional investment, and it's a sunk cost.
Yeah.
It's gone.
It's gone. They're not expecting you to return the money. They just think, okay, this is something you want to do. Okay.
Right.
It's like, buying your child a toy that he or she wants.
Okay, so it's like a toy. Here, play with it for a while, see what happens.
And then if you really make a go of it, they're happily surprised. Friends, because they can see how passionate you are, and if they have the money, they'll say, okay, let me put a bit of it in. Maybe I'll get some returns. And then there are, what we are missing right now are enough angel investors.
Are they the fools?
They're not the fools, but they have enough money, so they want to throw it around to 100 founders and say, okay, maybe one of them will make it. And if you go to Dubai, they have an angel investment group that is about 270 individuals who have said, okay, some of them will put it into this idea, some of them will put it into that idea. Pakistan does not have angel investors.
But they have people who have the money.
They have the money.
Why have we not been able to develop this ecosystem of funders?
Maybe because there are so many more easy ways for people to make money.
Real estate. Import cars.
So the number of people that we have spoken to say, hey, don't you care about investing in the young people in this country?
No. I care about my return. No, so but seriously, like people genuinely.
There are. Look around. How many angel investors are there?
There's none. I mean, I can.
And those of us who want to do it don't have the money.
No, but I thought it was more of a function of not having the right kind of legal protection. That, let's say, if I put in the money, I don't get it back. Guy runs away with it. Our legal system, our judicial system, the rule of law is weak. So there is little, let's say, recourse to my funds put in. I understand that, it's an angel investment, and so the likelihood of return is low. But there's got to be some legal framework that allows for recourse, which exists in, let's say, Dubai or Singapore or in the US or Hong Kong, wherever. But here it's weak. Is that a reason?
I don't think that's the reason. Because angel investors normally put in money without thinking of returns. It's the VC that needs to think about these things. How am I going to get my money back? How am I going to take it out of the country?
Right.
That kind of thing. But angel investors, sure, some of them will want returns, but not to the level where they want a legal document and things set up. So I don't think that's the reason. Although, of course, we should have a legal system that works.
Yeah.
But then that applies to everything.
Yeah.
Every kind of business. So why do people still invest?
Yeah.
So I don't think that is it. I think they don't realize the importance of angel investment. We need to create many more entrepreneurs. We need to create many more businesses. We cannot continue to rely on the businesses that exist and the individuals who have taken those businesses to a certain level. Because someday those individuals may not exist.
Right.
And our population is also growing at such a level that we need many more of those to build this economy.
So we don't have the ecosystem to promote entrepreneurs, is what you're saying at this point.
So we have the ecosystem to promote it. There was a time when nobody was talking about entrepreneurship, and there were some of us lone voices who were saying, we need more entrepreneurs. Now, even the government is talking about it. The large schools are promoting it. The Higher Education Commission is also, funding some of these startups. But it's not enough. We need to make it large enough so that many more individuals will experiment with the ideas that they have. And that's what it is. It's an experiment. Don't look at it as I'm funding this business. You are experimenting. You are helping somebody experiment, and it could work or it may not. But that person will learn so much from it that maybe the next idea they experiment with will, work out much better. And those are things that happen internationally that don't happen here.
What could change that mindset?
I don't know, time probably.
Of creating angel investors. Is it time or is it a big win? One big win?
Well, I know that Kareem changed a lot of people's minds.
Right.
People who were not investing in larger startups, for instance, local people, then said, hey, those guys, look at what they did. Although Kareem, is not a Pakistani startup.
Yeah, it's
Mudassir is a Pakistani founder, but it's not. But we've all looked at it as a Pakistani startup, right? And even people who've invested. So that changed a certain level of mindsets of big business groups who said, this is not a space that's ever going to make anybody any money. And then they saw Kareem.
Yeah.
So I think it is those kinds of things that are going to change people's mind. And these conversations we have amongst ourselves and with people in the business community, people with lots of money, to say, hey, just put a certain amount of money aside and say, look, I'm going to help develop this ecosystem for young people in this country, because it's going to overall help the country's economy and will eventually help me because I'm part of this country's economy. That's the mindset we need to have. And I think there are conversations happening, just not enough of them yet.
So when you put in money, one of the biggest fears is that how's my money going to be used? You don't want suddenly to see the entrepreneur funding a fancy, lavish lifestyle, big fancy office, the car has been upgraded, that kind of stuff. Like, when this happens, I'm going to pivot to a slightly different question. What makes a bad entrepreneur? You've just identified the perfect entrepreneur, identifies a problem, does deep research, identifies the team, does the networking, builds himself up, and then creates an MVP using friends, family, fool's money, then goes out to raise money, right? So that's the perfect startup founder.
But remember, he or she could make a mistake along the way.
Absolutely will, but they'll find a way to get up. But
not intentionally.
Not intentionally, but they'll find a way to get up, dust themselves off, and keep moving, right?
Absolutely.
You've met many startup founders. Give me examples of the worst ones you've come across. I don't want names. I mean, if you want to give names, I'll take names, but we'll make it more interesting. But no, give me some examples of characteristics of really bad startup founders.
The ones who think that they're in it to make money. That's all.
Really?
Yeah.
That's it?
That's all. They come into it thinking it's an easy way to make money, that they don't have to work hard, that they will use somebody else's money and they will make much more money. And that's it.
Can you spot that?
You can't really, but you'd have to have long conversations with them, meet them several times. Nobody's going to give anyone money without having several conversations anyway, and without looking into them. So if somebody is going to invest in a founder who has been part of my network, they will obviously come and talk to me and say, hey, I'm looking at investing in this guy. What do you think?
Right.
And what have you seen? I can't give any guarantees, but I can say over this period of time, this is what I've seen.
Right.
And this is how professional he or she is. This is the kind of work that they've done. This is the kind of research they've done. This is what I have seen, which makes me believe that whatever money you invest, they will put it to good use. And that they're not in it just to, get money out of you.
Right.
So there are founders who think that, I'm just going to do this, get money. And then some of them, especially when they're still students, there are a lot of founders who start companies when they're still students.
Mm-hmm.
They take the money and then they go off on a holiday. And then makes it tough.
How often does that happen? On a percentage?
Don't know. I mean, I hear about these things.
Right.
That, look, so-and-so won this competition. They were supposed to use that money to do X, Y, and Z thing, but instead they went off to, Singapore or Bangkok or wherever, and they spent the money and they haven't done any of this, but I have no recourse.
Yeah, I have no recourse, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, that happens because you are, after all, dealing with young people who've never had access to money, maybe.
Yeah.
And so the minute they have a large amount of money, they want to do all the things that they have never been able to do.
True.
And that's understandable. But you hope that family and education institutions have taught them enough so that they are ethical and they don't do this kind of thing. It takes time. And some people are still not going to learn. But many people have a conscience. And they'll say, okay, if this money has been given to me for this reason, I should use it for this reason.
Right.
You're right about founders who raise a lot of money and then think, okay, now I'm going to buy a car because I've never had a car. I'm going to get a fancy office because that's the kind of offices that exist in Silicon Valley. Mm-hmm. So my office should be like this as well. Mm-hmm. And then, all the people I hire, I'm going to hire the best people and give them everything they need. Mm. So these are the people who are not looking at their financial model.
Right.
They're just looking at spending the money they have. I would hope that if there was a VC who is invested in them, that he or she would offer that guidance. And, that they have an advisory board or someone who can take them through that and say, listen, this is how you should channel your money. Otherwise, you're going to run out of it.
So it's not just about writing the check. It's about creating a mentorship program where you guide them through these new changes, where you suddenly come with money, how to spend that money. In fact, I'm sure there's got to be a big play on your ego as well. If you do a big raise, suddenly your ego shifts, right? You were this downtrodden entrepreneur trying to raise money, get the world to notice. Suddenly someone says, here's a $2 million check. Let's go. Have you seen entrepreneurs flip because of their ego? I mean, you laugh. It means you've seen a lot.
Yeah.
So what does this big check do for their ego and how should they combat that change in thinking?
So I don't think anybody can combat the normal response that they have. So if today somebody gave me $10 million or something, I don't know, I might flip. I don't know because I've never had that amount of money.
Yeah.
So think of it along those lines, that these kids have never had money to do the kind of things they want to do. And suddenly somebody's given them $2 million. You would think that someone around them, whether it's a father, uncle, mother, whoever is sort of conversing with them and making sure that, they do the right thing, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in business, will guide them to a certain degree. That's why we suggest to a lot of founders that they should find a mentor early in the game who will guide them. Somebody who's done this before.
Right.
Somebody who knows what are the mistakes that people make. And somebody who can tell them that, look, this money will not last forever. Once it runs out, what are you going to do? So yes, today you bought a car, tomorrow you might have to sell everything that you bought, right?
You haven't thought that far out yet. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So there needs to be a mentor. And initially when we started the startup ecosystem here, there weren't enough mentors.
And so the Nest and even Katalyst, was it solving this problem? Was it providing that mentorship?
It was, and it was not us alone. Where I remember when we started the Nest, a lot of people were so excited from the business community, not necessarily techies, but people who were in business, who came over and said, how can we help? And that's what's good about Karachi. If somebody sees that there's something great that's happening, they will come over and they say, how can we help? And they mentored a lot of these young people early in the game. And they're still connected to them.
Right.
which is the best thing, because if you can be connected with your mentor over a long period of time, maybe you need additional mentors along the way. If you decide you're going to go into textiles, or you're going into manufacturing, or you're
Right.
going into something, you need mentors in that particular segment of the industry. But for somebody, for general guidance on how to run a business, for relationships, for connections, you need a mentor who can guide you through that over a long period of time, and who cares. They will not take anything from you, and most of these mentors don't. Until you've set up a business, you're making money, then if you involve them a lot more, then maybe you give them 1% or 2% of your company. But not early in the game. If they are responsible mentors, they're not going to ask for it, because many of these companies will not make it.
So how do you, if you're not part of one of these incubation or sort of startup, I guess incubation centers, how do you find a good mentor? Like, what's the way? I mean, for example, I've been wanting to find a good mentor. Never really found one. I got pieces of mentorship guidance along the way from different people on different things. But how does one establish a mentoring relationship with someone?
So you don't necessarily have to be a part of an incubation center. I think that was a beginning to start an ecosystem that was needed. Now there are lots of activities that many people hold, whether it's the business community, whether it's the pharmaceutical sector, whether it's Pasha as an IT association, TIE. There are so many organizations that hold these get-togethers. You need to be at those. And people don't understand the need as much as they should.
So the networking, you keep stressing.
The networking is important. Don't think of it as just an event. Don't think, oh, I'm going to go and that speaker is going to speak again, or, why do I want to hear so-and-so's story? But when you go there, there are other like-minded people. Yeah. There are professionals, there are VCs, there are other startup founders or business people who have come there who just want to meet you.
Right.
And maybe you have a conversation, and maybe you talk to somebody who's running a big company.
Right.
And you say, I'm thinking of doing this. And they say, really, from my experience, this is what could go wrong. Or why don't you come and see me? Usually when you want to meet somebody, maybe like, some of the big business groups, how do you reach out to them? If you're a young person in this country, you're not connected with them. Right. You're not part of that same
ecosystem.
Group.
Yeah.
So how do you meet them? You go to these things and you then work up the courage. It takes courage to say, hello, I'm so-and-so. This is what I'm doing. Nobody will say no. They will have a minute or two to talk to you.
Yeah.
And then if they're interested, if you can catch their attention, then they might agree to an appointment where you can go and have a longer conversation. And that's what we advise founders. Hey, listen, you need to make that first move. And very often young people come and ask me, but I'm nervous. I don't know that person. How can I just go and say, hello, I'm so-and-so? They're known, so I know who they are, but they don't know me. I said, but how do you start then?
That's where the elevator pitch comes in.
That's where the elevator pitch comes in.
And it's funny you mentioned the networking thing, right? Like it came to me that someone once mentioned to me, they're like, you talk about these networking events, that the ones you mentioned. The best networking events in Pakistan are
weddings.
Are weddings and soyams. Actually.
Soyams?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
Because you're past the grieving, burial, whatever. It is an aggregation of people. People sit on the sidelines. They do have a chat. It's a very serious, somber environment where you can have a quiet, productive conversation for 2 minutes. And you only need 2 minutes, right? A wedding still is a little bit more loud. It's still, a lot happening, right? And I looked at them. I said, are you crazy? What's wrong with you? They're like, no, but think about it. And I actually thought about it and I was like, you know what? That makes logical sense. And so for a startup founder, they should just track all the soyams that are taking place. And if there's a relevant person, just show up.
Okay, most of the founders track the soyams and the weddings for free food, actually.
That's also true. So a founder will never go hungry. They should just show up at weddings for dinner.
Yeah.
Cut their startup bill.
If somebody from the boys' side asks, who are you? They say
the girls' side.
And I've known founders who have done this.
Really?
Yeah. Which is fine. It's harmless.
That's a good hustle. So now one thing why we didn't touch on is we in our space, this founder space in our community in Pakistan, most are men.
Yeah.
Right? But you've seen a recent surge of women founders. Tell me, what do you think's brought that on, and what do women founders need to do differently?
Okay, so when I started the Nest, only one woman applied to be an entrepreneur within the first cohort.
That was 2015.
That was 2015, yeah. And I was really concerned. I said, what is this? Why aren't there more women?
Yeah.
And so I went out to universities, I went out to events. And when I spoke there, I said, why aren't you women thinking of starting businesses? And they said, nobody ever said that we could. So as we were growing up, as we were going to university, as we were part of family groups or business groups or wherever, nobody said that a woman could start a company. And we didn't see any role models. We didn't see any women who were out there who were leading companies. And that's true. If you think even now, there is a handful of women that you and I know who are at the top of their profession or on boards of companies. They're not enough. And so when young women don't see enough role models, they don't think it is something that they can do. And that is the problem. There is no reason they can't do it. They are just as capable, if not more capable, than many men I know. They are competent. They are bright. And if you give them that opportunity, they can create a company and run it. Yes, they have additional problems. They have multiple responsibilities in society. So if they have old aging parents, then it's usually the woman who takes care of their parents. If they're married, their husband, their children, the community, all those responsibilities, no one suggests that they should just shrug them aside and say, hey, I'm not going to do this. I'm an entrepreneur. Now I'm just going to run a business.
Right.
No, they will do that along with their business. And you find that most women who run businesses and scale them do all of this very efficiently. But you need to make that allowance for them to be able to do it. So if they are part of your company to begin with, then make sure that they have that flexibility so that they can go home maybe when the children are out of school and then continue working from home. Don't reduce their responsibilities. It's not a favor. Just give them that flexibility. Expect the same level of, work from them. But just make sure that it's not a 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 structure. It's a structure where they can even work on it at night once the children are asleep.
Right.
So those kind of flexibilities are needed if you're going to see many more women get to the top.
So you will have. So what you're saying, in effect, is that you will have to create a slightly different structure to accommodate for the different needs of women.
Yes. And now many men who want to spend more time with their children.
Right. The concept of co-parenting that's really taken off.
So, I mean, you hear now of large organizations, multinationals in Pakistan who are giving 6 months maternity leave as well as paternity leave.
Right.
And that's because the father wants to spend those early days with the child.
Yeah.
So I think it's no longer a question of gender. But having said that, we need to make sure more and more people think about this.
Right.
And it's great to see large organizations getting into this, supporting women who are looking at entrepreneurship, even funding them, making sure that they get training on leadership, on starting a business, on growing a business, all of those things. And that's great to see because that is something that was needed that nobody was looking at. But now they are. And now, on the 10th, there is a lunch that one woman entrepreneur has organized where she's invited, I think, about 60 or 70 women, business women. And these are becoming regular lunches where they can talk to each other, where they can exchange views, help scale their network so that there are more opportunities for them.
In fact, I was going to ask you, do you think these things work? Like, the ladies' lunch, there's FMCG brands that identify the top 10, 20, 50 women entrepreneurs or businessmen or successful women in their space. Do you think that these marketing efforts, because they're typically marketing efforts and they're kind of bringing women together as a way to sort of generate marketing for themselves as well? Do you think that these actually serve the purpose of starting conversations around women's entrepreneurship and the needs?
I think they do. You should not think that people do things just because the society needs it.
Right.
If they can include the fact that it's going to help the businesses, they're likely to continue those projects even longer. So the kind of organizations who have started these schemes, they may have started with the fact saying, we're going to help bring more women into the fold.
Right.
But then they saw that it worked, and that it worked also for their businesses, that these women whom they supported also opened bank accounts, also took loans, also, bought products from the MNCs who actually supported them. And then as they scaled their business, they were able to find different areas which MNCs may not have been looking at to sort of diversify the business. So I think once you start to look at something as something good that you're doing for someone, it ends up helping you also in whatever you're doing.
Right.
And that has been seen to work. And so I hope that many more organizations will continue to support women entrepreneurs, and they will see that it's not just something that they should look at as a supporting mechanism, but also a good business idea. The more women, remember when SECP said, all listed companies should have at least one woman on their board. And most of those companies said there aren't enough women qualified to be on our boards. And then this organization, Women for Boards, which I'm also a part of, they said, okay, we have this directory of women who are both qualified, certified, have passed exams, and do qualify to be on your board.
Yeah.
Choose one of them.
Right.
And so that has begun to happen, because you cannot be a naysayer and say, hey, I don't employ women because, there are not enough women, or that they're not smart enough, or that they won't give it the time. No, women give a lot of time to whatever they do, and they do it very seriously. So I'm glad to see many more. Some companies are now, not only having one woman on the board, they have 2 or 3 women, because they found that it, remember, your market is 50% women.
And it brings a different perspective.
It brings a totally different perspective, and you are selling to that 50%.
Correct.
More often than you're selling to the other 50%.
The decision maker is usually the woman in a household.
So
makes sense to have them on the board.
Yeah, it's a good business reason. So so it's begun to happen, but how long this process will take to bring the diversity, more evenly into most businesses in this country, I don't know. But it started, and that's good to see.
Talk to me about this one concept on the founder side, right? Incubation rabbits is the only word that comes to my mind. Where they hop from one incubator to another, but they never really get incubated. They never really hatch. They never actually go out and do anything. How bad is that? And is that really a thing? Because I've seen some people who you see I'm like, start up your startup already, stop incubating this thing. You've been incubating it for 5 years. So whose responsibility is that to say, okay, stop. That's it. No more incubation for you. You need to be thrown out into the wild. Or is it the responsibility of the founder? Because, if they can keep finding a place to park themselves, why not?
So I think it's both. The founder needs to be serious enough to say, okay, I have received help for 6 months in this incubation center where I've had to pay no rent, nothing. I've received mentoring, I've received support, I've been able to network, all of that. Now let me go out into the world and do something to prove that that has been helpful.
Right.
Also, incubation centers should not accept people who've already been part of another incubation cycle.
So that's
our responsibility as well.
And is that the law right now? Sort of the unspoken law? That's not the case right now.
It is not. But some of us have started implementing it.
Right.
That listen, if they've been part, and we phone each other and say, hey, this person was part of your incubation cycle. How long were they there? And that's it. And then we decide, no, they don't belong here. Unless now we're an accelerator. And that is the next level.
Fair enough. So the next level is fine.
It's fine. But you should not go from one incubator. Because, and I can understand the rationale behind it, because they get free space. And many incubation centers give them space for a year.
Yeah, that's free money.
And they just get used to it.
Yep.
And so you see, but what annoys me a lot more is established companies making use of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They go into incubation centers, and they're incubated because incubation centers want to make it seem that they have the best startups
Okay.
who have delivered this product or that. And those people say, oh, we're getting free space. We're going to put our interns there, or we're going to put a certain level of employee there, and we'll have our main office somewhere else. That happens.
So that's a win-win. It's like a marketing problem, right? One needs space, one needs marketing, problem solved.
Yeah, but is that the reason for an incubation center?
And is that the right use of the incubation center?
And also, on the other hand, now, the government has got into the act. Higher Education Commission has told every public sector university that they need to have an incubation center. Now, saying that is a simple statement, but most of those universities don't know what incubation centers are all about. So they can set aside a space, but do they do anything in those spaces? So some of us have started going to those universities and saying, okay, how can we help? Maybe share a curriculum, maybe talk to some of the kids, maybe talk to the faculty and say, okay, this is how you do it. We're trying to help, but we cannot cover the ground everywhere, right? But this is something that needs to be considered, that you cannot just have a mandate that everyone should have an incubation center, and then what?
What's your view on the armed forces getting into this space? Because on Shara FSL, there's a big NASTAP space that is doing exactly that. Is this their domain?
It's not. It's not their domain at all, but in a city where there are no technology parks, and we've been begging for them for years, anybody who sets up one, I guess we are taking it because it gives us good space, affordable space, where people can engage with each other. So we're saying, okay, it's definitely not their domain. And now we hear yesterday there was an announcement of one being set up in DHA.
Correct.
So everybody is getting in on the act because they feel that this is something that...
The hot new sector.
The hot.
We're going to make lots of money.
Nobody's going to make money on this. But the thing is, we're happy because the more spaces, the better.
Right.
There is space for companies to, set up their offices, engage with each other. There are research facilities.
Yeah.
There are auditoriums, all of that, which they would not be able to afford to get on their own.
And more importantly, there's a community of shared thinking.
There's a community of shit. And we hold events at NASTAP.
Yeah.
If there are other spaces, we'll hold events there. I think it's fine. As long as they're not taking anyone for a ride, it's fine. They want to get into this. Somebody in their top tier needs to decide if that's what they should be doing, but we're fine with it.
So the last few years we saw, like COVID and post-COVID, there was a lot of liquidity around the world, money pumped into different economies, interest rates were extremely low. So money was free and cheap. And, LPs invested in funds that then took bigger risks. In countries like Pakistan, we saw huge inflows coming in because money was cheap.
Yeah.
And when money is practically cheap and free, you're willing to take some crazy bets. And so LPs invested in funds that took crazy bets on Pakistan. There were some major headline failures in the startup space. And then at the same time, globally, money started to dry up, interest rates went up, economies are in a recession. There is a bit of a slowdown that's taking place around the world. That happened right after some very big blow-ups happened in the Pakistan VC space. Now we're seeing the stock market go up. The fundamentals are not right, but we're seeing some optimism. There's a government in place and so on. So there's optimism in Pakistan. There may be some structural reform coming. We don't know that yet. But globally, money is still not cheap the way it was. My question is, after sort of the very public blow-ups of a couple of startups, would Pakistan still be a viable place for startups to put money into, for funds to put money into and take a risk, knowing that there was a past of very poor management of startups, knowing that it's difficult to get money out of this country, and knowing that government has a shelf life of 3 years on average?
I think it's still definitely is seen as a country where people will invest. We've got a large population, so the consumer base is...
But 50% is below the poverty line.
Yes, but things are getting better. As you said, there's a government in place. There are local entrepreneurs who are doing things, businesses that are doing things to change the status quo. But even if 50%, say, are below the poverty line. You still have the remaining 50%. It's still a huge population. We still have talent here that, countries like Japan are coming and saying, look, we want to hire your people because you have good tech talent. Although we think it can be better, the tech talent that we have, but still it's enough that countries like Japan, Germany, others who don't have enough people are looking to hire our people. Saudi Arabia.
But the counter argument to that, just yesterday I spoke to Imran Khan of Raptor Games.
Yes.
And his biggest challenge was talent. He said, we don't have the quality of talent that we need. Even though we have the number of people, the talent doesn't exist. And it's cheaper, even though India is more expensive, it's cheaper to get things done in India because the kind of work quality produced by their people is far greater than the output we produce at even a lower price. So why would anyone come here? Because our talent quality is not there.
So he's right. But he's talking about a particular sector, which is gaming, which is not that big yet.
More it can be
big.
Yeah.
It can be big. And the thing is, we need to work on that talent. So we can't just give up and say, oh, we're going to outsource to such and such country, whether it's India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, whoever. We need to develop our people. We need to emphasize on the government as well as educational institutions, as well as create networks ourselves where we are training these people to the level that we need. That's begun to happen.
And is that the job of private enterprise or the government?
It's not the job of private enterprise, but private enterprise will have to get in and do it, and they are doing it. They're working with the government, and they're also running initiatives on their own. So the gaming sector, for instance, a group of them have got together and said, we need more talent and qualified talent, so let's work together to create that pool and hire the ones we need, and then let the others loose on the market because they will be needed by others. That's the right attitude.
Right.
So, but the government will have to do this because in order to create enough numbers, it's not going to be the private sector who will deliver on this.
But you see, the challenge with the government that I find is which part of the government will do this? Because we hear things about a digital Pakistan. There was an initiative around digital Pakistan. It was very sort of well promoted, and then it imploded. Then we hear things about, special technology zones coming up. Then we hear there's a Ministry of IT. Then there's a separate PEMNA. There's a separate PTA. There are so many government bodies. In fact, I had Javed Iqbal here from Special Technology Zones. And he mentioned the number of different entities covering the digital space that I was like, you'll never get anything done. Like, there's no way. And now there's talk again about revamping digital Pakistan again under the same person who was leading it before. So I'm very confused as to what is this digital Pakistan that will work on building this talent and digitizing the economy. So let me ask you, you get to design a digital Pakistan from scratch. What does it look like?
First, you have to look at the infrastructure that you have. What you need it's cheap to say we're going to create a digital Pakistan when a lot of your country doesn't even have internet facilities. Right? And good internet infrastructure. So you need to make sure that it spreads beyond the three main cities. Right now it's patchy at best.
Right.
Secondly, then you need to educate people to be able to use those technologies. Right? It's only when you're able to do that that you can even start to talk about a digital Pakistan. As far as the government is concerned, I think the less number of ministries or departments who are heading this, the better it's going to be. Because they're only, many, many years ago, when we took a delegation from Pakistan, an IT delegation to India, and we asked them, what is the reason for your success? Because they were on that pathway to success even then. They said, our government asked us, what do you need from us? And we told them nothing, just stay out of our way. And that's what we need as well. They need to stay out of our way. There needs to be a few policies for the protection of customers and companies, and then just leave it to us to do what we need to do. You can't have a ministry and a department for everything, and then you expect a small company, because you start off small, to go and deal with all of these ministries in order to get work done. It's just impossible. So Special Technology Zone, I thought, was initially a good idea if they implement it the right way, because they said nobody from any of the government departments will be allowed to enter the special technology zone. Technology companies will be free to operate. There will be no taxes on them initially, nothing. That is the way it needs to be done for them to grow. And then once they grow, then once they start to make money, yes, they should be taxed, definitely. But at this stage, if you have, a small company like mine, I am just making enough money so that I can pay my taxes and my employees and my rent. That's it. There's nothing left, because the number of taxes in themselves for a small company is just, it's ridiculous. You are not spreading open the tax base so that you tax real estate, you tax agriculture. There's only talk about it so far. I hope it happens, because then those of us who are paying taxes will not continue to pay increased taxes.
So, but in this whole notion of a digital Pakistan, to me, when I think of a digital Pakistan, right, I think of being able to operate my everyday life at the touch of a mobile phone.
So you are, and I am, but it's a very
But that
small
doesn't
number.
translate down. You're right.
Yes. And that's what needs to happen. And that will only happen if people have access to technology, if they have access to good infrastructure, and if they know how to use that.
But some of the things that, to me, for example, in a digital Pakistan, transferring a physical property should be 24 hours or less.
Yes.
Try to transfer a property now, mutation, registrar, documentation, none of the land records are digitized.
But in Punjab, they are.
Punjab, yes.
Yes.
So
why not in Sindh? Why not in KP?
We're not thinking Pakistan.
Yeah, we're have to think
province.
Pakistan.
We're thinking province,
We need to think Pakistan.
So Punjab is far ahead, even with licenses. You can renew your licenses online. So Punjab seems to have taken the step forward. But at a Pakistan level, try doing this in Balochistan. Yeah. Try doing this in KPK. KPK, fine, they did some work there, whatever. But Sindh is a complete undigital space. We're not thinking of it. And again, yes, powers of devolution, 18th Amendment, provinces are responsible for this stuff, etc., etc. I get that. They're responsible for the execution at the provincial level, but a vision is set at a national level.
I agree.
I feel that there is no vision, clear vision for what does a digital Pakistan look like. You keep talking about it, but tell me as a citizen of the country, what does it mean for me? And whether I'm a citizen of SECA or I'm a citizen of SECE, how does it impact my everyday life? I have not heard that answer to this date.
No, because they haven't thought of it. It needs to mean that I don't have to queue up outside multiple offices for hours on end in order to get anything done.
So a digital Pakistan is an efficient Pakistan.
It has to.
It saves my time and my effort and my energy.
And years ago when I went to Hyderabad, Dakkan, they had started that in India at that stage. The chief minister of the state had decided that this is the way to digitize this province. And so
you're on the board of a Sindh technology something.
Sindh Digital Technology Board.
You can make that change, right? Sitting on that, take that Dakkan idea and no, why not?
So I was also at one time on the Prime Minister's IT and Telecom Task Force. And there were about...
Which one of our 15 Prime Ministers over the last 5 years was this?
No, we haven't had 15 Prime Ministers.
I'm exaggerating.
But at one time it was Shehbaz Sharif. At one time it was Imran Khan. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who the person is. 15, 16 of us who are supposed to be people who are experts in the digital space flew to Islamabad at our own expense, stayed there to give them advice on what needs to be done.
You flew on your own expense, wow.
Yeah, they didn't pay for us. Everybody thinks that we were sort of benefiting because
lavishly.
Of being, but we weren't. We went there because we felt it needs to be done. We gave them advice. We told them why we were giving them that advice and what impact it would have.
Right.
Maybe a couple of things were done. None of the other pieces of advice were followed.
Is it because there's a lack of conviction or lack of leadership? Or lack of vision?
I think all three. Or they're just too busy doing other things and those create a better visibility.
Opening and closing NAB cases.
I don't know. But, and then people came to us, especially journalists, who said, oh, you're part of this task force and what have you guys done? And nothing has happened. And We explain to them that, look, we are not the executing body. We are only the advisory body. We give them advice. If they follow that advice, then something happens.
Yeah.
Right? Similarly, if you look at the Sindh Technology Board, Digital Technology Board, it's new. So I have some hope. There are some good people on it. The Chief Minister himself chaired a meeting yesterday and wanted advice on what to do in order to better digitize the province. We gave him advice. He told us what we needed to do in the next 2 weeks, what kind of advice we needed to give him. They need to have a team, right? In order to execute on this. And so we're helping them with that team.
Okay.
And then we've already given them advice as to what he has set himself a task that this is what I want to do. He said to digitize the government is not the difficult part. It's how to spread this across the province and make sure that people are able to use whatever we create and benefit from it. Great. Now let's see it happen. So most of us from the private, well, there are only 3 of us from the private sector who are on this board. And we said that, listen, we will tell you what needs to be done. If you can get your teams to do it, and you need further advice, we're willing to give it. We're willing to put in that extra time. But we need to see that something is happening. Otherwise, I said specifically to that entire board that after a while, I'm going to start wondering whether this is worth my time. Because I could be doing something else to benefit the city or this country or this province.
That creates far more value. Absolutely.
But the CM seems to be very serious about this. So fingers crossed, it's going to happen. It will take time. It's not going to happen like overnight. But we need to see that change happening in bits and pieces along the way. Not, you'll see the changes 5 years from now. No. I want to see a change 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, so that I can see that something is going on.
So that takes me to my last question, and it is very simple. I'm a 22-year-old graduating from college, and I have the option of leaving this country for greener pastures because of what I see, which is a lack of change and a lack of outcomes that will have a positive impact in the near term. Should I bet? Why should I bet on Pakistan when I have the option to exit?
So a lot of my colleagues, friends in the industry say we should hold people back. We should not allow them to leave the country. I disagree. I think if they can find greener pastures somewhere else, they should be allowed to go. Because we have so many people. We need to just build that resource pool. Let these people go. Let them develop. Let them be part of companies. This is what many other countries have done. And then let them send business back to this country. Let them help develop their families and their wealth. Why are we stopping them? I don't think it's fair. They're individuals. They're Pakistanis. They will always be Pakistanis at heart. Look at the diaspora who's now finally begun to contribute to the development of this country, of our economies. How is that going to happen unless you let people go outside? Now a lot more people are going to Saudi Arabia, going to the US, going to the UAE, and our talent is needed there. But they will come back. They will come back every year. They will send money back. And then maybe many of them have already started businesses here, which are going to grow and employ more people. So I would say let them go. But not all of us can go or should go. We should be working to build our own country. We should have that patriotism, which I remember years ago we used to have. Maybe we've been disillusioned to some extent. I could leave this country today. I came back here because my parents were moving back. I felt they needed me. Now they're no longer with me. They've died. I have no family here other than extended family. And so I could go back. I have a residency from Hong Kong. I could move back there and have lots of opportunities. But I feel there is a need for what I want to do here that will make me feel more satisfied about what I've done. Life may be easier somewhere else, but you will never feel that sense of accomplishment that you can.
And the impact you can have here.
And the impact you can have here. So it's purely selfish, that I want to feel that I'm needed here more than I'm needed somewhere else. Yes, we have problems, but let's help solve those problems rather than, yes, it'll take time. But things are changing and we need to make sure we help make that change happen.
Fantastic.
So I would request people, as many as can stay here and help make that change, let's do it. And those of us who want to go, good luck.
Progressive thought. I love it. Thank you so much. I loved this discussion. It was such a nice, insightful discussion on practically everything. Basically starting up a startup. That's what it was. And sort of where we see things headed. I appreciate the time. Best of luck on your journey. Happy to help and support in any way. Be a mentor if I can.
Absolutely.
To startup entrepreneurs. I'll tell them all about the things that they should not do to fail. And they still will.
They will still.
I have a long list of failures, far greater than my list of successes, but I'm happy to share that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Faizan.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning into DigiTales. Stay tuned for more episodes. Like, subscribe, comment, and we will give you exactly what you're looking for. Bye-bye.